Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome back to Pathfinder, Lord of Nothing. As today, no sense in dragging things out. Not yet, anyway. We've got some level ups in the queue, so we should probably knock those out first, before we get to cracking this cold case. Though, of course, at this point, we're also so close to the end of the DLC that we're going to keep this pretty simple. Grim, for example, picks up a bonus feat, a Key Power, and Key Strike Lawful, which, I've got to say, I'm not really sure we're going to get much use out of. Like, even as a Dungeon Master, I'd kind of struggle to think of situations where that would come up all that much, outside of, like, maybe picking a fight with a Protean, which methinks may be a bit beyond the scope of this particular adventure. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and grab Sudden Speed. Don't really need it, but it's a nice, cheap alternative to Dimensional Step for when we just need to go a little further, but don't want to burn 2 whole key to do it. Then for our new feat, in looking at our options, I notice we still don't have Trip banked. I could have sworn we had that one, if not as a direct pick. Sort of lumped in with something else we had picked up, but, who knows, they've changed a bunch of things over the past year or so. So we'll go ahead and grab that. If nothing else, it's an extra +2 to Trip. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Grim. Next up, we've got Sir Brown, who gets an extra rank of Sacred Armor, which we basically never use. But he does also gain access to 4th level spells. That's handy. And then, yes, pretty much everything's automatic from there, so the only thing left for him is to fill that new spell slot, which we will do with Crusader's Edge. One that I think will come in handy, considering we're pretty much guaranteed to run into demons and undead. After that, we've got Sentry, who gains access to 5th level spells, plus a free feat to boot. And as far as feats go, I've got to say, given that we have still been stacking his Persuasion, I am sorely tempted to go Arcane Spirit just because, thematically, that's pretty much that really feels in character for someone like Sentry. But, the more practical side of me recognizes it's a bunch of clicks for a non-guaranteed result, so I feel like we're better off just investing in Greater Spell Pen, especially, again, since we are apt to be going up against demons here. And then as for our spell, we'll go for a Conjuration Classic. We'll grab Cloud Kill. May or may not come in handy, depending on the mix of foes we encounter. But even if it doesn't, we've always got Icy Prison to fall back on. Next up, we've got Penta, who gains Bard Talents, +1 to Jack of all Trades, and of course access to 4th level spells. For her new Bard Talent, we'll keep it simple. We'll just grab Uncanny Dodge. We could grab a combat feat, but let's be honest, we usually have her operating in a support capacity anyway. So really, it was either Uncanny Dodge or Skill Focus. And Uncanny Dodge just felt more universally useful. Then we've got new spells. 1 level 3, 2 level 4s. And we'll just keep playing the Bard angle. We'll grab Sound Burst. Low damage, but chance to stun. As well as Communal See Invisibility. And again, leaning into the Bard angle, Shout. Low end on damage, but few things resist Sonic. And that's it for Penta. After that, we've got Record, who gains a free Rogue Talent, which can now come from his advanced list. Skills are skills. And then for that Rogue Talent, pretty much the only real choice we're making here. We still have a few potential archery feats we could take. I'm just not sure there's anything we really need. Like, Snapshot maybe, I guess, but how often would that really come up? So instead, given his recent experience with being stealthily ensorcelled, I think we'll invest in Slippery Mind. We know we're going up against demons. We know a lot of them like to throw around mind effects. So it just kind of feels like a practical investment. And that's it for record. Which brings us to Aiden. The character I am most perpetually perplexed as to what to do with. He gets a new wild talent, and I'm not going to lie, I have zero idea what I'm actually doing here, so, after looking at our options, I initially considered Enduring Earth, only to realize he wouldn't actually gain much from it, since it would only affect Entangling, which we've yet to use, and already has a 10-round duration. We have no shortage of Restoration, he's not in the line of fire enough for Jagged Flesh to matter. So I guess we'll just take Skill Focus, use Magic Device. We already have it for Knowledge Arcana. Might as well take it for the one other skill he has. Who knows, might come in handy. I mean, goodness knows there's no shortage of arcane labs scattered around the world, Wound. Though by all means, if you've got any other suggestions, I'm certainly all ears. But for now, we move on. Let's grab some rest, reset our buffs. And then it's time for Akhshan. And we're back. Apparently Akhshan will have to wait. Because as soon as I tried to walk over to the vendor, this happened. Would you look at that? We're greeted like heroes. And they wanted to drive us away at first. When the roots disappeared and opened the way to Karak, I knew you'd been successful. You would have heard the cry of relief. It's not over yet, though. Our path to freedom won't be easy. The chief frowns. Our best rangers have scouted Karak's den to gather information. It's even more terrifying than the legends would have you believe. And time seems not to have diminished his power at all. You should have waited for us to get back. I know your people are eager to leave, but we're better equipped for this sort of thing. Your people could have died. They could have, but going into the fight blind means we could all die. In any case, the risk was less than expected. Over many years, Karak has grown accustomed to safety. He knows some of his roots are weakened and pays no heed to it. That means we can still ambush the beast. Great. That raises our chances. Correct observation. According to my calculations... No! Sentry stands on his tiptoes and covers the android's mouth with his hand. No more calculations. You'll just say something like, we used to have 1 chance in a million, now we have 2 chances in a million. Be quiet, please. Don't spoil the morale. I have to ask, what exactly are your plans for once Karak is dead? Most of you have never set foot outside these woods. Well, first, I'll dance on his putrid corpse. Though, that's not what you're asking. When Karak is dead, his roots will vanish, and the road out of Starasta will finally be open. Hovul's voice trembles on those last words. We have old maps. We'll go to our people. Oh, buddy, I don't think that's going to work out the way you think it will. But I suppose one thing at a time. You think we're ready to take on Karak? I do not know. By Eomade, we will prevail. If not, well, then we shall die as crusaders, not as woodland savages. Hovul looks at his people confidently. This is our first chance in 100 years to get out of these woods. It might be our last. What do you say, warriors? Shall we fight? Or shall we cower? The tribesmen answer the chief with a war cry and raised arms. That's the spirit! You are worthy of your ancestors! Thank you for your kind words. Now, let me show you another ally. A massive dragon moves gently, trying not to clip the huts and people with his tail and powerful limbs. It looks at the chief from above.
You wish to go to battle with the outsiders, then take the people with you? That's madness. Chief, it will be a massacre. Your people will die, and their blood will be on your hands.
Then come with us, you cowardly lizard. Our ancestors took care of you. Now repay their descendants for their kindness.
I have protected this village for 100 years. My debt has long been paid. Dying for you, mortals, is not the oath I have taken.
Coward. Ovul's face shows disdain. No matter. We'll do it without him. You can talk to that lizard, but I know his answer already. He does not care, and he will not join us in the final battle. The one tie that bound him to us is his own scaly hide. Ah, so this is the fabled dragon that helped found your village. Yeah, I was wondering when we'd actually get to meet. In person. Since clearly this is the first time. It's a coward. Ovul spits on the ground. A useless lizard. No, I suspect he'll come around, otherwise why would you have even bothered calling him in? I guess if he's not going to help, we'll just have to do this ourselves. Right. We'll move on your word. We're ready. Yeah, just give me a moment. Let me have a word with our reluctant reptile here. Do not linger. We'll be waiting for you here. No worries, I'm not going far. Oh. Well, I guess that confirms where our shard is. You approach the dragon. One would assume a fire-breathing creature would emit heat. Instead, you only feel cold. Can you feel that? A very unpleasant chill. Sendri looks agitated. Thought I was imagining things. Bad sign, if you ask me.
Hello, little coin. You've rolled from beyond the woods and right into my talons, have you?
The dragon watches you and your companions with great interest. What do you need? Well, to put it bluntly, I'm wondering why you'd spend a century watching over these people, but then abandon them in their time of need. You're a big lad. We could use your help in the coming battle.
The answer is quite simple. Can't you work it out without my help? I don't want to die.
The dragon gazes into your eyes.
Dragons live for a long, long time. To you mortals, we are practically immortal. Maybe you'll kill Karak and bring freedom to the tribe? Very noble. You will die, and if the humans follow you, so will they. And your deal with the chief will mean nothing. Dead men need no freedom. I will not help those fools kill themselves. That's why I'm leaving.
So you don't think we'll win? We've taken down everything else we've encountered in these woods. What makes Karak any different?
Ah, my little coin. How mortal of you to say that. This isn't a question of belief. 100 years ago, chance forced me to fight on the side of the Crusaders. The best of their kind they were, men and women tempered like the finest steel. And did we win? No. We barely made it out alive.
100 years have passed. The situation might have changed. Dragons become more powerful with age. That is scientific fact. What if Karak is less of a threat to you now? The dragon chuckles, wisps of smoke rising from its nostrils.
You might be right, my talking treasure.
I will not put that theory to the test, however. Well, it would seem your mind is made up, so far be it for me to try changing it. But do you mind if we ask you a few questions? This might be our only chance.
Yes, well, seeing as this is your last chance, ask away. After all, why not?
So why don't we start at the beginning? How exactly did you and these people end up here?
Crusaders chased me into this blighted forest. Ancestors of the villagers. I was young, reckless, I wanted to fight. My wing was damaged in the first battle, and then they gave me a real chase.
If that's the case, then what changed? Why'd you end up protecting them?
An old oath. The dragon spits out the words. I fled the battlefield, right into this damned forest. A group of crusaders pursued me. We clashed, and our fight attracted Karok's attention. The master of these woods had already gone mad, and he didn't want any new tenants in his domain. He unleashed his wrath upon us. We'd all be dead if we hadn't banded together. And that's how it's been ever since. Fate, demons take it. If it weren't for my damaged wing, I'd have left those fools to the local flora long ago.
Well, you certainly seem to get along with some of them fairly well. Old Man Action, for example. Why might that be?
Well, you seem to be the dragon expert, my curious coin. Perhaps I do have another, less magnificent form. We might even have talked back there, in the village. Who knows?
Well, I'd say both of us do. You weren't exactly subtle about it. What about the rest of the village? Have they caught on?
No, not a single soul. I like to wander around, as they say, incognito.
Red dragons aren't exactly known for their altruism. I saw you fly in here. It seems like your wing is long since healed. So why stick around?
Are you implying I've enjoyed it? A dragon isn't motivated by enjoyment, but by curiosity. I found it interesting to listen to their talks and songs by the fire. Their old wives' tales. Come to think of it, these little mortals are most curious creatures.
Well, clearly you're not at all invested in their fate, so I guess I should just ask about something else.
Yes. What a large amount of curiosity for such a tiny creature.
Well, truth be told, that was just the warm-up act. The icebreaker, if you will. And, now that the ice has been broken, we need to talk about Sithud's soul shards.
The dragon looks at you steadily. I've no idea what you're talking about, little coin.
Really? You've never heard the name Sithud?
Sithud. That does sound familiar. It's a name, yes? I've heard it before, but where?
Well, tell me this. Have you had any strange visions this past 100 years? Heard voices, perhaps? Like waking dreams. Sometimes it comes over me. Ice, freezing cold, snow, and old bones.
Sentry shivers. The dragon closes his eyes. What a good name. Waking dreams. I call them ice memories. They are not mine, yet I see them sometimes. How do you know? Have you witnessed them as well? We do, which is why we knew these ice walls were likely related as well. You're doing, I assume? Correct. The ice keeps Carrot's servants away. But you're a red dragon, not a white one. What's with the ice, then? Hey, Sentry, finally asking the obvious question. Strange, no? The dragon's voice is pensive. It happened a long time ago, before I was stuck here. As a young dragon, I once ate a frost giant. He was putrid and gritty. I became so ill, I thought it would be the end of me. And when I recovered, my fire had turned to frost. The giant must have been cursed, or was it something else? It's a bit of both. It's a problem we both share. Oh? And what might that be? The thing inside you. It's a soul shard of the demon lord Sithud. That frost giant must have been his servant. And it just so happens that the shard is the reason we're here. I see. To tell you the truth, I wouldn't mind getting rid of it. I miss my flame, and I've grown tired of its vile visions. But will I be able to protect the village, and myself, without the shard? Well, if all goes as planned, you won't need to, but there is another complication. Apparently the shards can't be removed without killing the bearer. Though I'm not entirely sure when that became a thing. So, that's how it is, little coin. We would have to fight then. Let's leave it for later. First, deal with Karak. And then, if you survive, come to me. Agreed? I mean, sure, but if Karak kills us, then he ends up with our shards and you're in even more trouble. We'll figure it out. Splendid. Yeah, sure is. Alright, well, Dragon. I guess you never gave us another name, so we'll just call you Akhshan. Akhshan, we're gonna go kill Karak, and then I guess we'll see where things go from there. I guess have fun sitting on the sidelines, definitely not coming to our aid. Yes, well, just talk those people out of coming with you. That is my last word. And good luck. That was a very weird conversation that I don't think was originally meant to take place in this village. No skill checks, but some pretty heavy-handed foreshadowing. And we cannot, in fact, talk Hovul out of it, so I guess we'll just let this play out. Ready your men. It's time to go. Hovul looks at his people, then raises a clenched fist. Karak, we are coming for you! Alright, Akhshan. See you in a bit. Onwards, Crusaders! Let's claim our freedom! We're in the very heart of this blighted forest. Stay vigilant. Karak is nearby. Right. And I am very glad we did not set our short-term buffs in advance, because otherwise that 20-minute time jump would have killed them.
It's time to act!
Man, this whole arc is kind of all over the place. The framework is fine. Like, at its heart, the skeleton of it is a halfway decent little adventure, but it's definitely starting to give me those sorts of rushed
unfinished vibes that I was getting back in the Mage Tower. Like, they're never really giving us any actual choices here. Though actually, no, now that I think about it, I did forget to go back and raid the Akhshan's lair. Perhaps that would have actually made a difference. Maybe if we had stolen his horde, he wouldn't come flying to our rescue for this final fight. Might have to double check that off screen. But yeah, I mean, otherwise it really does feel like a very heavy-handed sort of, I want you to see the cool thing I've set up, sort of railroading. And aside from possibly the thing with the dragon horde, which I'm not convinced would have actually changed anything, we haven't really had any real choices in this entire arc, other than maybe you could have ended up fighting the nymphs, you could have refused the undead druid's request, and missed out on, I assume, his reward, but picked a separate, optional fight with whatever was haunting that clearing. But, like, long-term, I can't see any of that having any real impact on the overarching narrative. It would have been very short-term, slight variances in how things played out, while still ultimately leading you to the same end result, that being the destruction of Karok's roots and this inevitable showdown. With Akhshan, who never really needed to be a dragon, literally waiting in the wings to swoop in for what I'm assuming will be a last-minute sacrifice to save the day at the cost of his own life, which I also suppose we could have influenced if we had just attacked him on the spot, but, you know, why? Why would you do that? Though again, maybe you would have had to fight him if you had plundered his horde before actually talking to him in the village. I don't know. You know, maybe I'm just setting my expectations too high. It is a largely self-contained 15-hour DLC campaign. I have been a mite bit spoiled by the 100-plus hour campaigns with Rogue Trader, Wrath, Kingmaker. You know, those are games where you have tens, hundreds of hours to plant the seeds of your choices and then give them ample time to grow before you inevitably reap the consequences of said decisions. Whereas here, they were obviously working within a much more finite framework. I imagine Akhshan's a dragon because it's cool, not necessarily because it was all that important to the story. I can't imagine they'll make us fight him after Karok, so I have to imagine the only other narrative twist that makes sense is that he'll fly in and die fighting him. Which is admittedly cool, but also cliched and feels pretty unearned, since, you know, we didn't really do anything to make that happen, aside from not rob or attack him.
The mission must be carried out.
Oh, shoot, this is actually Karok. Okay. Wow. Record, buddy. You know, balance level really feels all over the place with this one, too. That's something else I've noticed. Those corrupted fly traps heavily outweigh everything else we've encountered. Which is weird, because, like, they're clearly intended to be the main mundane mooks of this adventure. And yet they've consistently outperformed, you know, corrupted bullets and scythe trees and now Karok himself, it would seem. It just kind of adds to the weird, sort of wonky feeling this whole arc has been giving me. But let's see what happens here. We've already got Karok half down, so I mean, if Akhshan is swooping in to our rescue, he'd better do it soon. Oof. Even with greater spell pen, that's rough. This might turn into an actual fight after all. Oh, nope, scratch that. Turns out rock beats paper. Oh, are we doing this? Did you just get plot armor? Oh, Lord of Nothing, what are you doing, man? Alright, cue the dragon. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm entertained, I guess. I am smiling. The Dungeon Master in me does appreciate all of the tropes we just almost practically tripped over. Also, did Akhshan kill the rest of the villagers on his way in? Or... No, I guess that was probably Karok's cutscene gas, which was so potent it briefly overwhelmed our communal delay poison. Cutscenes are the real mythic threat. Karok's Thorn. +2 destructive dagger on nat 20. If the wielder is a rogue or slayer of 7th level or higher or an assassin, they inflict a negative level on the target. Wow. Way to be extra fiddly. And Karok's Smite. 6 times per day, the wearer of this Ring of Protection +2 can cast Call Lightning. Okay, you know what? That's not terrible. That we might actually get some use from. How about you, Akhshan? How you doing, bud? I mean, the plot demands you die, so I'm assuming not great. The dragon takes his human form with great difficulty. He does it for the last time. His wounds are too grave. The survivors gather around him, trying to touch the dying creature so that he doesn't feel alone in his final moments. Awkward. Havul's the only one who actually survived the cutscene. Your wing. It's been healed all this time? The chief is flabbergasted. All these years you were by our side of your own accord. Foolish, noble lizard. Live your new life with honor, filthy human. My friend. Akhshan, you came to help us after all. Good thing, too. We thought we had it, but, then right there at the end, we were suddenly on the ropes. Thank you for saving us. I didn't want to help or to die. It is what it is. Let's not dwell on it. Okay. Just as the taint of the abyss has changed Karok, so has the time in the village changed me. The icicle in me is a trifle compared to a different kind of poison that penetrated my heart. Love. I came to love these people. They are my greatest treasure. And dragons protect their treasure. To the end. I ask you for a coup de grace, little coin. I'm ready to go now. Oh, wow. Zero hesitation. It's stone cold, Steve Austin. A wisp of smoke rises from the dragon's dead body. Then the ice shard emerges from its scales. Here comes our prize. I'll take it. Any objections? Yes. Sentry already has 2 shards. There's a high probability that a 3rd would be harmful. Will it maim him? Drive him insane? I'd rather not find out. Yeah, what she said. Let me take this abomination. You two are already burdened enough. No, it was my kill. I'll carry the weight. The shard sinks into your hand. It brings with it pain, cold, and a promise of infinite power. We should return to the village. There is still much to do. Yeah, I'll be right there. Dragon key, you say? Hoarder's hat +2. Okay, not super useful for us, but I'll take it. The key, however, would certainly seem to imply that we now have access to the Horde. Though, I feel like... Okay, well, hold on. Let's see if it's even still there. I've got some thoughts. I mean, look, I don't want to keep harping on about this. I just feel like there's a decent framework. I just feel like there's obviously a lot of ways they could have handled this whole thing better. Forest Tracker's Boots. +10 competence bonus on nature lore. And +20 max HP on your animal companion. Yet another fantastic get for our druid in absentia. Though he will be tagging in for the next run, so plenty of new toys for him to play with. Honestly, given the number of prizes clearly aimed at wilderness-oriented characters, druids, rangers, etc., it does feel like this adventure really should have had more just general nature stuff overall. Like, the theme is there, but I'm actually really hard-pressed to remember all that many nature lore or related skill checks that we actually had to make. Though, to be fair, that is one of my actual points of contention with this adventure overall. Just the lack of skill checks in general. Outside of perhaps the Fae, since I do recall we had a persuasion check there. Hear ye, hear ye. Karok is dead. We are free. Where are the Crusaders who came to our aid? There they are. We made it? What are the chances? Thank you. We will never forget your heroism. Oh, it would be wonderful to stay here and celebrate our victory. But alas, there is no time. We must go as well. Farewell. May the gods guide you. Yeah, good luck with that. You're probably in for some pretty nasty surprises once you actually get out there. I probably could have stood to give you a primer or something. Hey, Millen. You know what? Obviously, they kept her here for utility, much like the other shopkeep. But I actually don't mind that. She did foreshadow that earlier when we were talking to her about her life in the woods. About how, even if they did find a way out, she would stay behind to continue her studies. Oh. Why are you still here? Yeah, they probably could have stood to update your dialogue, you know, to reflect the new circumstances. See, I think... Oh, wow, we've got a whole bunch of other people here, too. Including the, captain of the guard, who never had any meaningful lines. They gave him a name and everything, but he just never really did anything. Yeah, again, I'm getting, real... What was that? Again, I'm getting like real set up to be something grander sort of vibes. Like there's framework here that in many cases feels unfinished or doesn't kind of make sense for the payoff we got. But yeah, I don't want to be too negative here. I want to be practical in my critique. I feel like there's potentially the framework here for a fun little side quest. A bit cliched overall, you know, but just the execution really kind of fell flat the way they let it play out. And I just want to double check one thing here with Akhshan's horde. And then I will share some... I'll share some thoughts. Okay, his horde's still here. Yeah, look, I love getting treasure. This is really not how it should have played out. But let's see what we got. Mirror's kind of weirdly daunting. Sungleam Cuirass. +1 breastplate that is also unusually clean and shiny. This piece of armor was crafted by Fizzle Brightspark, a gnome blacksmith. Fizzle believed that clean, shining armor brings the warrior good luck. He had been known to claim that ofttimes the gods take a shine to shiny people. Thus he crafted the Sungleam Cuirass from an alloy of steel and sun silver, imbuing it with an alchemical solution that ensured it was always pristine and gleaming. The armor has been through many a battle, but has maintained its luster. Its immaculate surface seems to repel grime and blood, a feature no doubt appreciated by many adventurers. While not the most potent of artifacts, it stands as a symbol of impeccable presentation and pride. Whether one believes in Fizzle's philosophy or not, this self-cleaning armor certainly makes a bold statement. Wow, I actually kind of love that. I mean, I also feel like, given the nature of 3rd edition D&D, that probably should have been translated into like a +1 charisma or something. But as a dungeon master, I actually really love those sorts of mundane magic items. Obviously, it's still functional as a +1 breastplate, but the rest of that really gives it some decent flavor. Yeah, see, this, however, is a much more competitive item. Chain Shirt of Life Vim. +3 chain shirt with a +4 profane bonus versus attacks of non-living creatures, which we have actually seen before. I believe we picked one of those up in the main campaign as well. The attack from Titan scenario. The guy who pretended to be wounded, only to turn into a big old skinless monster when we went to investigate. Shock Thundering Trident +2. Interesting. Would be useful if we actually had anyone who used tridents, but thanks, I guess. Well, still makes decent trade fodder, I suppose. Chain shirt's still useful, as are the boots we found earlier. And Karok's ring. Honestly, just conceptually, I really like the Sungleam Cuirass. Sadly, I don't think we have much use for it, but I wish we saw more items like that in general. You know, slapping raw numbers on things makes them boring. Alright, so we're pretty much done here. We're going to wrap things up shortly, but, you know, just to get it out of my system, as a dungeon master, I just want to say, I like this adventure conceptually. I feel like the execution really fell short. And I think a large part of the reason why it fell short is that it never really gives the player much of a sense of agency, because almost every aspect is preordained. You have to get trapped here. You have to help the villagers. You have to destroy Karok's roots to get access to Karok. You have to kill Karok to free the villagers. and Akhshan has to die. Though, just as a quick side note, I feel like they just introduced that aspect of not being able to remove a shard without someone dying. Like, was that ever mentioned before? Am I just completely memory holing that? Was that ever implied before? But, ignoring that, I feel like there's a lot of ways they could have just pretty easily fixed. Oh, that's right. That's the forever grumbling and groaning. That's where he fought Old Mo's husband. Clearly there's something going wonky with the audio there. But yeah. Short of it, I feel like this story still could have played out largely the way it did without making the player feel like they were just along for the ride. If there had been more choices at key points, with at least some better short-term consequences, possibly all feeding into a more satisfying long-term conclusion to this specific arc, to determine the final fate of Akhshan, the mystery dragon who otherwise, as it played out here, was largely just sidelined for most of the narrative. They introduced the concept and then we just never really did anything with it until right up at the very end, when he suddenly just showed up and decided to sacrifice himself. Though we did have that one option to potentially pick a fight with him right before, for no real reason, other than, I suppose, just not trusting him to hand over the shard after. But see, I feel like, as a dungeon master, the way I might have approached that is, A, don't make it so obvious that he was the dragon the whole time. Like, we pinged him the second we got here, especially because they explicitly wouldn't let us interact with him, even though he had been introduced as, like, the village's advisor, and one of the 2 oldest people in the village, etc. But, like, what if they had actually let us interact with him as the village's advisor? What if we could have talked to him about the various other trials and tribulations of the villagers as we went around doing all the other local side quests? The love-struck apprentice, Old Mo's husband, the fate of the undead druid or the flower princess and her fae. Those could have all been used to feed the player clues as to his true identity. And they could have made it less obvious by, having some other potential red herrings in there, like Old Mo or that captain who never got to do anything. But yeah, make it like an optional step of every one of those subquests to go talk to the local advisor and see what his thoughts on it are. Have him push the player to try to help people, the best way possible. And if the player persistently doesn't or fails to do that, then have him turn on the player at the end. Maybe even rally the villagers against the player, because he deems the player to not have their best interests at heart. Make the player feel the consequences of their inconsiderate decisions, while inversely making it feel more earned if Akhshan does stick around to help the player and makes the ultimate sacrifice during the final fight, which itself could have been handled better, but, again, that's kind of a separate issue. But yeah, the short of it, I suppose, is that the player should have been given more chances to interact with the key players, and more chances to at least feel like they were influencing how things played out, aside from just a few potential bonus fights. And even in those cases, if you just want it to be a potential optional bonus fight, give the player a better reason to do it. Unless the player is just a jerk, why would they refuse to dispose of the undead druid the way he asked? Why would you not try to talk down the fae and explain their mistake as opposed to just slaughtering them? At least in that case, there was a skill check, so you could blame it on a bad skill roll, I suppose. I feel like there was more we should have been able to do with Old Mo's husband. As far gone as he was, he did seem to show some signs of recognition when we mentioned his wife's name. I feel like we should have at least been able to go get her and try to jog him a bit further along. Perhaps have him make a sacrifice for her sake as opposed to forcing a fight. The player still could have had a fight. Karok could have sent some other things to fight them. But at least give the player a chance to feel better about how it resolves. Or, just maybe make taking out the roots optional. Everyone told us that we had to destroy those roots to weaken Karok, but he went down pretty easy. Maybe let the player skip roots and take on a stronger Karok if they're not happy with how one of those could have potentially resolved. which, while it might initially seem like it allows the player to dodge potential consequences for their actions, it actually gives a separate layer of consequence on top of it, because they're deciding not to resolve a certain subquest in exchange for fighting a stronger end boss. And of course you could tie that into how other things play out as well, the overarching long game of the side quest. You know, whether or not Akhshan ends up helping the player. If the player decides to leave too many quests unresolved, then that would count against them when it comes time for him to make his decision. Or, here's another thought. Don't force the player to kill Karok. Karok's not carrying one of the shards, so narratively there's no reason he has to die. The only person who has to die is, apparently, Akhshan. And in retrospect, I feel like that could have actually added a really interesting twist to the story, too. Because narratively, we know that Karok went mad when the world wound opened up and the demon invasion began. He used to protect the people of Sarasta until the world wound drove him mad, at which point he became the de facto imprisoner of the people living here, whom he used as resources to further secure his realm against the demon invasion beyond. But what if the reason he was hostile to the villagers wasn't because of the villagers? What if it was because Akhshan is carrying a shard of a demon soul and has embedded himself in the Crusaders' village? That would have potentially presented the player with a very interesting moral dilemma. Both of the principal power players in this scenario would essentially be trying to protect the villagers through their own misguided means. Akhshan against the mad Karok, not realizing that perhaps his presence was what continued driving Karok against his wards. You know, perhaps the player could have gained context about that situation from the Undead Druid or the Fae, individuals who had been around since this whole thing started. And in the end, faced with a branching path to either talk Karok down by agreeing to eliminate Akhshan, or working with Akhshan to destroy Karok. Or, you know, possibly a narratively optimal option where you convince Akhshan to sacrifice himself, so Karok will release the villagers or provide them with a safer shelter against the hazards of the world wound. Or option D, destroy them both. The murder hobo approach, you know, the one that gives you the least satisfying narrative payoff, but the most loot and XP. Which, just as a quick aside, is one of my other minor points of contention with this overall side quest. We should not have gotten that dragon horde after Akhshan sacrificed himself. We only should have gotten it if we had needlessly picked a fight with him. Just narratively and from like a loot balance standpoint. If he sacrificed himself, we should have gone there to find that he had moved a bunch of his treasure before having his change of heart. You know, maybe leave like 1 or 2 chests there, but not the whole thing. It was an optional boss fight. We shouldn't have been able to skip the boss fight and then also get the full reward. But that's really just kind of narrative nitpicking. This side quest just had a lot of other more intrinsic issues, which I've spent a lot more time talking about than I really meant to. Sorry about that. Which I do hope really kind of gets across that I'm not really mad about how this played out. I'm just a little disappointed because I like the underlying ideas of the story they were trying to tell. I just feel like they really could have played it out better. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's certainly not the worst that I've seen, and goodness knows I'm still playing it. I am invested enough to want to know how this all ends, and then to see how it, in theory, impacts the main campaign, which we are going to get back to at some point. Anyway, curious to hear what you guys might think, so, you know, let me know in the comments down below. I've shared my thoughts. Feel free to share yours. And for now, we'll hit the pause button. I'll take care of the usual off-screen bookkeeping, and we will pick up here next time as we head back to the Polar Nexus. And I think at this point we just have one dungeon left. For better or worse, our grim adventure is coming to an end. It has been an experience, and I do very much want to see how it all ends. See you then. Oh, and special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Eerie V23, Revenant, Alois, Arrow Bowman, Dragon Matrix 7, Drakiith, EgonAlter, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Lady Shayna, Mark Giemza, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz, Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, if you'd also like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things. Trust me, it does make a difference. Or you could even check out the PayPal, the Patreon, the Nexus GG, or the YouTube memberships. Links are in the description.
Time to act!